get a chance to just get centered here for this time together. I'm very fortunate to be in a position, all of us, to be able to discuss this topic. There's a large amount of privilege in this, for sure. And it's something I feel forever grateful for. And, I, like many of you, have been working on my own development for some 30 plus years now. And in fact, probably even back to when I was younger than that, going back into my single digit time, right? But it's still a work in progress. And the last couple of weeks for me has been really filled with a great deal of energy and excitement because I get to do a lot of my life's work. But that also has brought on some anxiety because there's so much now required of me. And so that really hit me as Michael and I were talking last week about the idea of what is our through line across the kind of three areas of our lives. And Michael will get into explaining more of that in detail. And so that really put me into the mood to be more retrospective, and something else that we all have to do as part of the steps towards pivoting, whether it's pivoting your career or pivoting your life. And it's something that made me realize that although I had been feeling all this anxiety and again, starting to beat myself up again for not doing certain things and not doing this, that I am in the midst of living a hell of an epic life. In the past 6 to 7 weeks, I've been to Hawaii, Miami, visited friends and did some work in San Francisco, visited the family on the Oregon coast, have been going into Lake Tahoe almost every other day to be able to just kind of cool off and feel the sun, and still getting to do all this work that I love. And it really made me realize that I am truly living an epic life now. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. It means that we're still going to struggle. We're still going to have the other things. But I continue to work to get back to where I am, to be present, to be grateful, to be mindful. And that is a really important component of this. And, that's where I wrote this piece that I shared yesterday, that an epic life is not without struggle. It's just as a reminder that while we're imagining this dream job, this dream life, and everything that we can have, that doesn't mean that it's going to be without error, doesn't mean that it's going to be without challenges, but it's something that we can all have. And for me, as I dove more deeply into it, I realized very early when I did What Color Is Your Parachute, that my chief value was freedom over security. That's what allowed me to be an entrepreneur, because I was allowed to be free in my choices, free in controlling my time and what I do, up until you meet the client, at least. As those of you who have worked with clients over the years, we're not entirely free, I guess, to that extent, but free to get to that moment, and then free to choose how we engage in that moment and where we focus our attention. And particularly over the last 10 years, I realized that what that meant for me was that I got to choose, in looking at the work that I do, whether or not it creates social impact, which brings me a great deal of satisfaction in the things I care about, whether it creates income for me and how much income I decide for it to create, and then ultimately whether or not I have an equity stake in the work, in the long-term value that I'm creating. And as those of you who have been participating over the last several weeks know, the career transformation and career pivot that we're talking about is the one that enables you to more equitably share in the gain share we're producing for the companies which we serve, or for the clients that we serve. And in fact, right now I'm engaged in 2 separate conversations about that mix of cash and equity. And so what I'm really excited about working with Michael through this Waymaker series is that for me, I've just kind of done it. I'm an in the flow, creative, spontaneous person, which means if you're a detail-oriented person, I might drive you nuts, or we can find a way to work together and make the most of that unique little gift. But what I have come to respect through being in flow and being chaotic, or chaotic, as I would like our good friend D. Hawk to have said about me at some point, I recognize and respect structure. And with the process that Michael has developed and that we've been working on together over the past several weeks, there's a really nice process and framework to kind of help you examine who you are, what it is you really want, and to create a plan for getting there. So let me just turn this over right now to Michael, and Michael, have you get underway and start sharing a little bit more about how we pivot to an epic life and what that roadmap might look like for some people.
Sure. Thank you, Chris, and what a great orientation. Thank you. Let me start with first making you a promise. I promise not to waste your time today. Two, over this next 40 or so minutes, we'll introduce one big idea and a couple, two or three supporting ideas. And today, we intend to really kind of examine what is an epic life and what is a pivot to an epic life. And then to Mark's point, what are some concrete aspects in terms of what we can do today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, in terms of living that. This is all in the context of people making their way in the world. And just a quick note about that. We came up with the term Waymakers with the idea that the call, the opportunity, the call for today is really to stand in possibilities unburdened by the past. And not only to stand in possibilities, but to make the way for others to join us in that stand. And in so doing, creating a conversation and perhaps a movement around how do we make our way in the world of continuous optimization by organizations, untethered work, and way too many good options. So, and I really want to emphasize that last one, way too many options. And in fact, in the conversation I had yesterday, someone was saying, who will remain nameless at this point, well, gosh, shouldn't I be like a venture capital firm and look at 300 deals before I pull the trigger on one? And I said, well, yeah, that's one way of dealing with too many options, but it's an epic waste of time. When you're clear about who you are and the gift that the singular gift that you want to bring to the world and how it transforms the lives of others, everything flips. And at that point, you're no longer looking for a job, you're no longer looking for engagement, but you're interviewing potential partners for their fit with your mission, vision, and values. And so this is really, that's the essence of, if you will, of today, is how do we flip the script? How do we say, good, this is who I am, these are my values in action, this is my stand in the world, this is the difference that I make, not plan to make, but this is the difference that I make moment to moment. And now the question is, who are you relative to my stand? And as we start looking at that in terms of employment situations or engagements, then the question then becomes, how good of a fit are you to my mission, vision, values, and gift? And at that point, everything. They start. They get into that. Let me say this again. This is premised on that they are the commodity. The company, the situation, the potential client, they are commoditized. They have money, they have a problem, they have requirements, and a certain amount of stupidity. On the other hand, I'm bringing clarity, purpose, follow through, and trust to their situation. So the question then is, how do we monetize that? So that's what our conversation is today. So perhaps I should share my screen?
Yes, and Michael, just really quickly, because something really strikes me there is important, and I know it's intrinsic in your thinking about this, but could you talk about the scarcity abundance mindset switch there a little bit? I think it's really important for people to understand.
Well, sure. It's been my experience that whether you're a consultant or a job seeker, you oftentimes feel, and in fact are, on the short end of the power stick. I need something and I want it from you. And that inherently is not a winning proposition. And so what we want to do is we want to flip that and say, hey, look, I'm the prize. I am the scarce, unique, high added value resource. You're lucky to have me working on your team. Now, again, you can hear that with a certain amount of hubris or a certain amount of pride or arrogance, and perhaps it's my character to do that, is to kind of overplay that a little bit. But I'm doing so to make it a little more crisp and clear, to really have a high contrast with what most people do, which is they kind of, gosh, they show up needy, they show up wanting, they show up like, oh, would you please get, like Oliver Twist, can I have some more, please? And that's just, that just doesn't work. That's not going to get you, that's not going to land you the opportunity that is going to draw the best out of you.
And people can really feel that energy coming from you when you're in that state as well, as I know firsthand from my own experience living in that state and trying to get past that sort of imposter syndrome. But that's a topic for another day. I just thought it was important to point out that we really have to kind of embrace the abundance opportunity as opposed to being stuck in scarcity.
Right.
Michael, you want to share your screen and jump on into it?
Sure. Let's see here. Let me put this in presentation mode. Cool. So let's just kind of do a quick timeline in terms of what we're going to do today. One is what constitutes a post-COVID career landscape. So we'll introduce that and let's discuss that. Let's move through some discussions of that. Two, what's the essence of an epic life? And then three, what are the crucial 11 steps of living that life with impeccability? So we've done our homework. We're not going to waste your time. Let's get into this. Let's see if that is. Yep, great. So essentially, here we want to outline kind of three basic engagements, three basic points of entry. In some cases, some people are here saying, oh, well, how do I advance my career? And with the Great Resignation underway, it's how do I search for a replacement? Well, you get a career advisor, mentor maybe, or you go back to school, or you get lucky. Now, in some cases, we're executing a career shift. And a career shift is oftentimes where I'm actually moving into a whole new industry or even a whole new part of the country. And there, the options are, I'm going to consult and contract for a while to kind of get my bearings in this new domain. I can reboot as an executive intern. And Don, that sounds like what you were doing a little bit in your coaching practice. You called it volunteering, same idea. Or you just get lucky and you get a pivotal introduction and you land a new job. And by the way, that's another a theme that we'll develop a little bit later, is how do you get lucky? And that really comes down to who's in your third circle of trust that will make those pivotal introductions. And then the next one is get a career coach or catalyst. And however, today we're going to be focusing on a career pivot, which is either transform your job position or co-invent a new engagement. Now, let me share a story, an anecdote. So as I was doing research on career pivots, I ran across had the opportunity to meet with and interview with a senior executive at Clorox. I won't mention his name at this point, but he's still a senior executive at Clorox. And I asked him, how did you end up in this really great job? And he says, well, I got out of Berkeley, UC Berkeley Haas School of Business with my MBA, and I got a job with Clorox, and I got a job as a brand manager on one of the lesser prominent brands, and it was so exciting. It was like I had trouble going to sleep at night with the excitement about what I would get to do the next day. And he said, and every day it was new. Every day it was like, oh my God, wow. And I'm learning all this. And there are parts, I was discovering all these things that I had learned in school. I had application. And everything was just dazzling. And I felt alive. And this went on for 2 or 3 years. And then I got another, so they promoted me to a larger brand. And in that job, it was good. It wasn't like the first job, but it was good. I mean, I was making my numbers. I was having fun, but it didn't quite have that same verve. It didn't quite have that same sense of excitement, and I was on the cusp of another breakthrough. And then finally, I got another. They finally promoted me to one of their big brands, and it was like okay, and then it got less okay, and then it got to be like I dreaded coming to work. Now he says, now I'm into this, my career now, 10 years, and at this point I go, wow, I hate this. And then he did something quite remarkable. He put a pad of paper on his desk, and he put a line down the middle of it, and he said, what do I love about this job and what do I hate about this job? And just as he would journal, and over the course of a week and a half, he journaled a number of things, and it turned out the list of things that he hated was longer and more intense than the things that he loved. And he knew that the next rung on his career ladder would be a general manager of a product group. And I said, well, what did you hate? He says, I hated getting phone calls from Walmart. I hate the fucking fire drill that they put me through, because they want 50 basis points here, 75 basis points here in margin. And it's like, I hate fire drills. I hate the hardball, fuck you interviews, discussions, debates, arguments that I have with these clients. And then I realized that to become a general manager, whereas these conversations that I hate occupied about 20% of my day, if I became a general manager, that would become 80% of my day. And he said, I felt nauseous. I felt horrible. And it was like, oh my God, I will die if I continue on this path. And it just so happens that the senior vice president walks into his room and says, hey, how you doing? And he says, not so good. And he says, what's going on? And he showed him a list. And then the senior vice president did something that was truly transformational. He said, well, why don't you make a list? Why don't you build out the list of stuff that you love and then create a job around that? And so he did. And he says, come back to me in about a week or two and we'll see what we can do about that. And it turned out that what he loved doing, he loved taking new insights and applying them. He loved going from one group to another, where he could take an insight from a consumer insight from one group and then apply it across 2 or 3 other groups. He loved the whole notion of marketing technology and really kind of systematizing how they did these new. In the course of this, he invented a job which he now has called VP of marketing transformation and innovation. That, in essence, is a career pivot. Now, at the base of that is this existential threat, this existential recognition that if I take one more step in the direction that I'm going, I will die. Now, some of us are not yet to that point of rock bottom, but we can see it. So the question then is, are there options by which to make a pivot now before you make yourself ill? And yes. And so that will be the substance of the rest of our conversation. Now, the other part that I want to introduce here is co-invent a new engagement. And in our past webinars, we've talked about some aspects of that, of how to be more fairly compensated for the value that you bring. Now, for the last 30 years, 25, 30 years, I have focused in one particular area of making business cases, strategic business cases for the acquisition and deployment of enterprise technology. And this really got me into the whole, how do CFOs of major organizations, how do they determine the relative value of a proposed technology solution? And how do we measure it? And one of the things that became thunderously clear to me after having done this for 25 years is that most executives leave 95% of the value of their value that was realized by their organization. They leave 95% of the value on the table. They're settling for 5 cents on the dollar. You say, what? What? How does that work? So oftentimes, so there's two parts to an executive's job. There's working the business, getting it done, hitting your numbers. And then the second part, and this is now become prominent for most executives today, which is transform the business. And usually that's a digital transformation of some sort. But there's working the business, hit my numbers, and then transforming the business. Now, when you transform a business, you put in place new systems, processes, and technology. You put in new accountabilities. That then becomes an operationalized capability that will deliver a value for the next 5 or 10 years. And not just a little bit of value, but hundreds of millions, billions in value. How much of that incremental value that you created, or that you and your team created, how much of that value are you do you have an equitable gain share? And I'm going to say probably none. You got your salary, you got your 401k, maybe you got your performance bonus, chump change, 5 cents on the dollar. So, as we start to work through reinventing a new engagement, it is, and it follows the path, what we call Moneyball for corporate professionals. It is really beginning to create a financial model of your value add over multiple years to the organization, just like Scott Barros did for A-Rod when he negotiated a $500 million contract for A-Rod and the Yankees. He said, look, here are the Yankee financials. Tickets, season ticket sales, broadcast rights, merchandise, licensing, concessions, and so on. And with the A-Rod sauce on the Yankee steak, here is $5 billion of incremental revenue over the next 7 years that A-Rod will bring to the Yankee franchise. Of that $5 billion, what would be a fair and equitable gain share? Now, we can put that into a model and do a stress test with net present value, internal rate of return, all that kind of stuff. But the whole point is, it was then very, very clear that A-Rod was worth $500 million for a 7-year contract. So how do we take that model and bring it into the corporate area? First of all, we start by by not just reinventing our job position, but co-inventing a new engagement. So that you're not engaged as an employee, but you're engaged as a business of one, and that ultimately becomes an engagement LLC. Or launch or join a new venture. That could be a professional practice, small business, funded innovation startup, or a leveraged IP lifestyle business. So today is really about, today we're going to focus on the inner work of transforming your job position and getting clear about perhaps how the first steps of co-inventing a new engagement, a whole new way of bringing value to the market, whether it's clients or client partners or just the market in general. Cool. Before I go on, questions on this? Chris, you want to? I'm having difficulty reading the things here.
Yeah, there's nothing to read right now in there, but I do have just one other addition to this in terms of the Engagement LLC. In fact, that's essentially how Michael and I are working right now. We are co-developing a lot of this material is his, obviously, and I'm very grateful to have a chance to help to curate it and present it. But where we've been able to create the basic terms of agreement for how are we going to operate together, that this is a new path for startups, where it doesn't necessarily require us now in the wisdom economy to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to get things underway, when we have our human capital that we can contribute together and determine the terms in which we're going to do that and get alignment around our shared values and objectives and communicate clearly and regularly to be able to work in this common direction so that we can contribute our IP, we can maintain our own individual rights to that IP, and we can do something greater than we could alone together. So, this doesn't just apply to going in as an executive. This applies to thinking about your small business and even innovation startups. So I just wanted to make sure that was something that was also understood here. And to Mark's question, how many A-Rods are out there and how to become one? Well, Farm League doesn't do too bad either necessarily. I don't think I'd want to live that life compared to A-Rods, but we have to put in the 10,000 hours for sure. And maybe it's not being an A-Rod, but it's at least being on the team and being able to
Chris,
express that value.
Let me speak to that, because this is kind of a wink to Mark. Value is in the eye of the buyer. So while A-Rod is a particular commodity for the Yankees, it is the fucking Yankees. So the question then is, in terms of what you bring, the gift that you bring, it's not necessarily bringing it to the Yankees, but it's bringing it to your customer, your partner, who sees as much value as the Yankees saw in A-Rod. So it's a matter of being selective of your context, as opposed to, well, gosh, how do I compete in the world? By the way, this is going to be another bottom line. When you truly step into your gift, you have no competition. You have no competition. And in fact, you have an overabundance of opportunities.
Michael, if I might, may I make a comment? It's not a question.
Please.
So I think what you've just shared is totally brilliant, may I say, because I'm familiar with corporates, large corporations, and the way they're only thinking in terms of incremental thinking, and they will be distinct as dinosaurs.
Yes.
But I think that this is also true of almost every company out there. They are not thinking about exponential change, which is what you've put on the table through digitalization. Anyone who could help any company do that is generating multiples of, but certainly 10x plus whatever else that bottom line is, but even more important, preventing the extinction of that company. So if you could help train people to learn how to do that for companies and make that available, I'm all in.
Cool. Just perfect. And just two things. One, we're not in the training business per se. We're in the business of unlocking what's already there. So I'm suggesting that that transformational catalyst is already there. It's just hidden, buried under a bunch of suboptimal narratives.
Impediments.
Tell about ourselves and the world.
So the way we block ourselves.
Yep. Perfect. And then two, we are in an age of digital transformation. We're in an age of continuous optimization by these Godzilla organizations. And as I said, they've got more money than God. They've got huge problems, and they're profoundly stupid about how to affect these transformations. Now, it's not that they're bad; they're just filled with stupor. They're filled with stories of yesterday, not stories of today. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so I'm outlining here life in 3 acts. There's the first act is the age of discovery, and it is what you do from birth to 30 or 35 years old. And essentially, you ask the question, who am I? Where do I belong? What brings me joy, happiness, and pleasure? Now, it turns out that of all of that, the most important question in the age of discovery is, where do I belong? And social study and psychological study after study again demonstrates, proves in data that the peer groups of the groups to which you decided to become a member have a life affect the trajectory of your life. So anyway, that's the job of discovery. And then between the age of 30, 35 or so, there's what I call an undoing, an unraveling. And that undoing is saying, look, I know my parents want this, I know my friends want this, but fuck it. That's not where I'm at. I don't want to do that. I'm not working on Maggie's farm. No, I'm not. I really need to find out what is personally meaningful and compelling and interesting and worthwhile. As Chris shared earlier, I live life with a certain reckless pursuit of an ideal with abandon. I'm an explorer. I'm an adventurer. I don't need security like other people need security blankets. So, as we go through this undoing, it turns out that that's where oftentimes you will switch groups with peer groups with which you are deeply connected. So this is another part of successfully navigating this undoing, is to be mindful, conscious, deliberate, and persistent. Mindful about what groups are going to pull from you, require from you, pull through you your talents, what will bring you joy, happiness, and pleasure. So the next period is a period of investment from the ages of 30 to 60 or so. You know, what will I master? What can I parlay into more? And how far can I take this? And then you get into your 60s, and there's another undoing. And that goes into, well, what got me here? And that goes into the harvest. What got me here? What lessons can I share? What's my contribution, boon to others? Now, and then of course, we finally, live out to death. Now, in the course of this, there are these dropouts. These like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. And it's what I characterized as, I ain't working on Maggie's farm, cubicle farm no more. I'm pivoting to an epic life. And this is really a life characterized by transformation. Now, it's a reawakening at any age. And it has the set of questions of, what's my singular gift to share? How does that transform, how does that gift transform the lives of those who receive it? How does it call me into inspired action? What must I drop, surrender, or minimize? So before I go on to the next piece, questions about this? Yeah, buts, how buts? Cool.
Makes a lot of sense, Michael.
Going once, going twice. All right. So, as we said at the beginning, Waymakers stand in a possibility, unburdened by the past, and hold forth, inspired by the mysteries of being human. And I'll say that last part. Hold forth, inspired. Hold forth into the world, inspired by the mysteries of being human. Which is to say, there's a very healthy dose of unknowns. There's a very healthy dose of unknown unknowns becoming the source of anxiety, uncertainty. And the question then is, how do we transform those anxieties into partners that fuel our ability to move, to hold forth into this larger and larger possibility? Okay, so there's a couple, three things and I want to call attention to, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. So this I stole from Mark Andreessen. Our proposition is that the overlap of something that's batshit crazy and stuff that might work. So this is not a cookie cutter, add water and stir. This is really about pioneering your own personal frontier. Great. Now, here's the bad news about living an epic life. It comes at a cost. It comes at a tremendous price. And that is what I call the completing the 4 lessons of an epic life. Where you, one, learn how to be loved. And when you learn to be loved, we oftentimes learn that as a child. Our parents just love us. So if there's any kind of noise in the system, any resistance to receiving love, you're going to find living an epic life uncomfortable until you get that lesson in. 2, how to love another. And we use these friends and family. How do we love others? And again, a part of that is experiencing gratitude for the gifts of energy and the presence of others. I'll say that again. We master loving another by our ability to receive the presence of others as a gift of energy with gratitude. So gratitude is the tool, the way by which we start moving this. 3, how do I learn to love another without condition? Now, oftentimes this is the role of a child, the children in our life. And when these little babies come into the world, it's like there's a part of us that reawakens. There's a part of us that comes to life that we never, ever had imagined. And once they ring that bell, you can never unring it. You can never put that genie back in the box. So again, loving others without a condition is and the action of that is what I call abiding love. And I'll explain that in a moment. But here's the bitch. Here's the hard lesson. And the one that I found just, first of all, I had learned as a function of my early childhood experiences around my mom that I was not a particularly lovable guy. And this made it really uncomfortable life that I lived. And I'll share a story another day about that. But fundamentally, this is the fourth lesson, is learning to be transformed by another's love of you. Learning to be transformed by another's love of you. Now that becomes the template, the prototype for your transformational gift. Because as you bring your transformational gift to the world, it will transform you. You can't bring a transformational gift in the world without being transformed by it. And that is really bad news. And good news. Okay. Now the fifth one is then, this is the optional one, which is learning to teach others by action and deed how to learn these 4 lessons. Which is what I'm doing right now. I am saying, hey, here are these 4 lessons. And oh, by the way, for those that are on a journey of mastery and transformation, it's also about not just learning these, but bringing them forth with clarity and humanity, such that people go, yeah, I want to learn that too. Cool. Heather, I agree with you that it's more good news than bad. However, if you're still on this side of it, it is really, really bad news until you actually undergo the process. So I absolutely agree with you. I didn't say it's bad. I'm just saying it's really uncomfortable if you haven't learned these lessons. Does that make sense? See? Cool. All right, so let me go back to my screen again. Well, shit, what happened to it? Am I sharing the screen at this point? Guys, am I sharing the screen?
Yes, but it's dark for some reason.
Yeah. That's because my browser crashed. Okay. Thank God I got a backup.
And what I was saying before, just as Michael's trying to pull that up, is that, you know, it really is hard to get to this place. And I guess the other part of it is that, you know, many of us have just discovered this, that mastery isn't absolute confidence and knowledge and certainty. It's actually the acceptance that we're constantly learning, that we're constantly transforming, and that we are in this flow of life. And so the acceptance of that ongoing change, of the ongoing practice of living, of being in this mindset, of taking this approach, of remembering, as I did in the past few days, that the life we have is pretty epic and we want to make it better still. You know, there's a lot of pain and difficulty in that, but when you can be in the moment and when you can actually recognize what you really have, and you can accept the love of others and start to love yourself some more, all of these other doors start opening up, and we find a lot greater confidence and just calmness as well.
Cool. So let's move on. So I'm going to just do a quick kind of 1 minute on 2 slides, 1 minute each on 2 slides, and then we'll get into the substance of it. So for those that are kind of in that investment period or switching into that investment period, there's 2 things to know about what to master. 1, focus on building and earning trust. This is the foundation of all successful careers. 1, where where I've got credibility. As a trusted partner vouches for you. I like you. What you say sounds about right. It's credible, as opposed to something that's simply seductive, incoherent, or merely logical. 2, you have reliability, which is to say, I have skills that I consistently deliver. So I'm not insincere, or I make promises that I know I don't keep. And that is, I trust you that you will deliver what you promise. Now, here's one of the problems with the reliability. Most people, most professionals, have an inadequate system for managing their promises. I'll say that again. Most professionals have an inadequate, insufficient system by which to manage their commitments. And so that is where that's going to be an area like love lessons. That's going to be an area that is going to be of persistent pain until you address. Now, I love the Getting Things Done by David Allen as a framework for that, but it's just one of several frameworks. Third, welcome, John. The third element is intimacy, which is to say, I feel comfortable disclosing more about me and you. Now, I don't know people that saw the Chris's post on Facebook and LinkedIn, but that was a brilliant, inspired expression of intimacy, of a willingness to look foolish, but loving and standing in the willingness to be foolish as a way of communicating something heartfelt, something valuable. And so Chris perfectly demonstrated waymaking, which is to say, here's stuff that I haven't figured out, I'm still wrestling with, and here I stand taking one step forward. That is the work. And then times intelligent, which is, it's good for me and it's good for you. Now, the truth, and my friends Don and Robert will remember, Bob will remember, that I lived professionally, I lived the life of a bandit. I did things that were good for me that were not necessarily good for people, for companies that I worked with. And we can go into this privately, we can go into why that is, but I know the life of a bandit. And it is not very fulfilling. Cool. So the job here in your investment period is really focusing on and mastering trust. Where I'm credible, reliable, I'm intimate, times I'm always focused on what's the win-win. And to the extent that I can think, design, and deliver good for me, good for you solutions, you become more trustworthy. So that's why I call it as a cofactor here. One more thing on becoming reliable, and that is conversations for action. It's critical, important that we understand conversations for action as being things that start off with being prepared, setting the context, negotiating, specifically what are ultimately getting to mutual conditions of satisfaction, where then you deliver. Not only do you deliver something complete, but also then getting a customer to declare that they're satisfied. So one of the cornerstones of trust is the conscious, deliberate, persistent intent to accomplish the declared satisfaction of customers that hinges upon the full agreement of mutual conditions of satisfaction. And that's where we fall down. We fall down by not putting in the time to really develop mutual conditions of satisfaction that are truly win-win, that are truly intelligent, that are credible, that I have skills and the ability to deliver, and that I have fully disclosed what are the risks and things that are not yet figured out. Okay, let's go on to the next piece. Mark asked the question about an A-Rod. I'm not going to have spend a lot of time on this, but as we start to work through what am I, your customer will increasingly measure you in terms of value that you've realized, the value that they've realized, versus the value potential, value creation potential. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we're getting close to our appointed hour. Let me then conclude on this particular thing. So these are the steps. These are the steps of a career transformation. There's the commit. I'm just gonna. There's the current position. In life, where am I? How does the world show up? Then there's the retrospective. What happened? What's the story about what happened? And what's the deep down truth? As we start to doing that, we start unpacking gifts. What are my values in action? What's in my skill stack? What are my ways of working in best and worst environments? As I alluded to earlier, it is important that we become mindful and conscious and deliberate about what contexts, what situations pull my genius out, and what contexts suppress or thwart my expression. So part of bringing your gift into the world is knowing that you're not a one-size-fits-all. There's a 2% out there that are waiting for you to show up and deliver. Now this middle part, daily practices, getting things done, accountability, those are all the core foundation principles of getting things done. As I said before, most professionals, as they shift into this new higher level of performance, have inadequate daily practices. They have inadequate systems for getting things done. And they have fuzzy, ill-defined, and often conflicting accountabilities. So it's important that we understand that, how that works. Great. Let's see the chat here. Okay. Then we get into a career stack. What combination of skills, narrative, and anxieties frame my superpowers? So let me, and then gets into, and then that shifts into the singular gift. However, let me just take this time here to share an aspect of what do I mean by anxieties. So when I started out, I was an incredibly shy, deeply shamed introvert who wanted to make a difference but had no fucking idea how to do that. I was functionally illiterate. I literally could not string together two coherent sentences. You put me on a stage, I would have just crawled up into a ball. So over the course of a decade or so, I learned painfully how to write. Why? Because I put myself into professional environments that required that I write. I put myself into environments that required public speaking. So now the third part of this, and this is the part that I want to share. The thing that I hate about my job, the thing I hate about bringing my gift, which I'll share in a moment, the thing that I hate about it is how to hold forth in a way that's intimate, that's vulnerable, and unguarded. I hate that. And yet, my best work is done when I am vulnerable and available, accessible, and intimate. And I still, at age 67, I still hate this. And yet, I must. And this is an example of how I am transformed by the thing that I want to bring to the world. Okay. So the question then is, and in the future we'll do things on future proofing, which are some by which we start to orient our brain for living a more epic life. But I really want to call attention to these last three or four places and close on the singular gift. So singular gift is, what singular gift calls me to contribute it? How will it transform the lives of those who you intend to serve? And how, and then engagement packaging. How will I organize an optimal engagement and a fair exchange of value with my true fans? I alluded that to it earlier. This is really more around packaging a business case that you will perform in a more equitable exchange of value. Presencing. Presencing is what gifts of information, interaction, and experience for others, waymakes for others to engage my singular gift. So this is not about marketing and sales. This is about showing up. This is about being there. It's about being there to have a conversation for what's possible. And then fan basing. How does this demonstration transform the experience of life of just one person? That, by the way, is the distillation of brand marketing. So I've been in the brand marketing space for 30 years. And this is the quintessence of a successful marketing campaign. How does this, what I'm doing, whether it's something I write, something I'm speaking, some interaction, how does this demonstration, how does the demonstration of my gift transform the experience of just one person? So it's not about communicating to the masses. It's about connecting with just one person. And as you connect with that one person, it closes a circuit, and it begins to spin, and it begins to accelerate out into wider and wider circles. So the question then is, okay, the question might be, okay, Michael, what's your singular gift? Okay, what is it? And first of all, I don't know with certainty this is it. I have a pretty good idea that it has these elements. And I don't think I will ever really know with certainty what it is. And I'm good with that. 2, I have lived my life. I have truly lived my life in the reckless pursuit of an ideal with an abandon. I have experienced freedom that most people would go, wow, we should lock you up. That should be illegal. I have had more adventure and fun than should be legal. And that is the gift that I have to give here. It is the ability to stand in a possibility unburdened by the past. It is the ability to stand in the moment now and see, what are my options here? And which of them draws me forth? And what draws me forth is giving the gift of freedom, giving the gift of freedom, choice, giving the gift of power, encouragement to pursue that. And then ultimately reminding people that they have forgotten something. Reminding people that when you bring your gift to those, when you bring that gift that transforms the lives of others, not only are you transformed, but you're in a flow that some people call abundance. Some people call more than enough. So the source of prosperity, the source of abundance, is not about pursuing wealth, but it is about delivering the goods. And when we deliver the goods that are heartfelt from me to you, when they are just that, it then creates its own little vortex. It creates a loop that becomes self-fulfilling and self-generating. And that is what changes the world. So let me conclude on one last point. What we're talking about in terms of an epic life is changing the background, altering the background by which we make sense of the world. Most of us, for most of our life, we've made sense of the world by solving problems. Most of us have made sense of the world dealing with that there's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong out there, and there's something wrong in me. There's something that's not quite right. And when we surrender that often necessary illusion, we find ourselves in a world where all is well. In this moment now, I have everything that I need. In this moment now, I have everything that I need. And that's all there is, just this moment now. And all of this is just all stuff that's not relevant to your being present in the moment now. And so as we really begin to understand how to become conscious, deliberate, and persistent in being present in the moment now, we have access to what will be, to what is an epic life. And what makes it epic is that I'm no longer solving problems. Yes, problems get solved, but that's not the focus anymore. The focus here is, how can I be of service? And how can I be in service in such a way that transforms me? And in the process, transforms you. So, on behalf of Waymakers, I want to thank you for participating today. That is the substance of it. I think, please read the interview at LinkedIn. There's going to be a resource folder that Chris will share with you. A video of this will be available. By the way, tomorrow at the same time, we have an executive collaboratory, and basically it's where we take one idea and really tear it apart and work it through. So, Don, you're really welcome to come to that if you can make it tomorrow at 10. It's tailor-made for you. Mark, wink, wink. It's probably tailor-made for you as well. And you're all invited. The other thing is that Chris and I are doing lunch and learn Zooms for on-site briefings at corporations. So if there's opportunities to do some version of this in a corporate environment or exhibit conference, let us know. And then in some cases, there's a talent ecosystem survey, which is really helping people understand how this fits into a corporate development. Okay, Chris, any last remarks?
Yes, I just wanted to express my hope that those of you who were able to join us today were able to not only take in this information and possibility to understand through story and structure what the potential is, but that you can feel it the way that I do. That it is more than a knowing. It is when we take that knowing and we get inside of our body and it turns into becoming. And it is scary. It's not necessarily bad, but it's scary and it's painful. But as with most things in life, it's only like that really at the beginning. And the more and more we get to work these muscles and practice and live within this sort of way of being, the more it becomes natural, the less scary it is. And the more we actually learn what our true strength and potential is. So I hope that you're able to feel some of that through what we've been able to share today. And I'd just like to now, as we conclude, open it up to questions and any other things where you'd like maybe some other advice or insight or anything we could do to help you further along in the next 20 minutes in our overtime, or we're going to hang out here and talk a little bit further. switch to gallery view so I can see you. You can just hang up your hand if you want to do that. You can just speak up, whatever works for you right now. Or if you just want the time to go meditate and think about all this, you can have that as well.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you for those notes, Mark. Thank you, John. Yeah, and if you have to go, obviously, please do.
Yeah,
Heather. Yeah.
Heather.
I'm wondering if you can talk more about the mutual conditions of satisfaction, like how to have that conversation with the customer, as you call them, or the client, or the person that you're working with. I find that that's a really kind of hard conversation to get to, especially if, as you're saying, something is not declared, it's not written down. It's just a kind of the agreement was made and there's no clarity.
Sure. So, as you recall, there was the preparation to have the conversation. And so generally, the mistake that we all make as independent contractors, consultants, is we try to move too quickly to our proposal and getting the contract. That's general. So job number one is to make sure that they have committed to solve an urgent bad for me if I don't problem. So that's job number one, is they have committed to solve an urgent, i.e. bad for me, bad for us, bad for the company, bad for me problem to solve that kind of a problem. And until they commit to solving an urgent problem, the ignoring of which will only bring them more pain, they're not really ready to have an authentic conversation. So what I do, and we'll be doing this in the future. We'll do a webinar on this. Is I use this to create. I use something called a conceptual agreement, and it is essentially a proposal that doesn't have a timeline, deliverables, or cost. And in this conceptual agreement, it's really about getting them to solve the problem, getting them to commit the problem, and in the course of doing that, reveal their criteria or conditions of satisfaction. Two, almost always the problem that they say they have is symptomatic. That is to say, it's symptoms. It's not the root cause. So this requires that you listen with what I'll call frameworks. Now, one of the frameworks that we used, that we talked about, was the in our previous session, was is it a process improvement? Is it cost reduction? Is it increased sales? As an example, do you remember seeing those, Heather? Great. So there are some frameworks that we use to listen, and almost always, the problem that they need to solve is they need almost always to build a new operationalized capability, which consists of people / accountabilities, content, performance, support, which increasingly is videos, process, which is some sort of a workflow or some sort of workflow steps, and then technology. So now, ultimately, the person that you're working with is trying to get a result. I want more sales. So give me an example of a type of a result that your client or customer typically wants. We'll unpack that.
I want more participants or engagement.
Great. So more participants in some sort of a workshop or program. Is that right? Great. So the root cause of not having more participants is it's going to be a combination of they are not really in touch with their gift, or they are selling when they should be doing something else. They're not really accessing, they're not really working with their third circle of trust. So the third circle of trust, as we define it, are those individuals who know you, who love you, and while they may not necessarily be your customer, they are connected with your customers. So a great example of both Don and Bob here earlier today. Bob and Don are in my third circle of trust. We've known each other for 25 years. We respect each other. We love each other. We want the best for each other. And in the case of Bob, he says, hey, and I'm going to bring two buddies along. So one anecdote. So I coached a fellow who put together a really successful conference. And he then sold his business and went to work for a conference company, where he was running these conferences all around the world: China, India, North Africa, Europe, and so on. And over the course, over 20 or so different conferences, they surveyed who actually paid to come. What was the thing? What was the single factor that most induced somebody to pull out their MasterCard or Visa and buy a ticket? And he said there was one variable that was head and shoulders above everything else. It was who introduced them, who recommended that they go to this. So it turned out a trusted, warm introduction was the critical factor for who actually paid for a ticket. So he says, oh, I get it. So all of his marketing came down to these love letters to people that would then pull their buddies and professional colleagues into the conversation. So for now, Kieran, he wanted to make sure that he had a share-worthy experience. And so his whole marketing came down to creating share-worthy experiences. So that's the result. So then when you say, okay, so now again, we won't have time today, but if we say, hey, look, your client, really, the thing that's missing in your business is that you have an insufficient supply, an insufficient inventory, an insufficient capability of creating share-worthy experiences. So then that leads into the question, well, what is a share-worthy experience? And this gets, so your business, so then your proposition is going to somehow be around, okay, people, content, process, technology. What do you have and what are you missing around creating share-worthy experiences? Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Anything else on that? I think there's just one more little cherry we will put on the top of that piece of pie. Anything?
Well, I have a related question actually around it.
Sure.
And I feel like I'm back on my rite of passage asking why are so many VPs in the Valley being assholes? But why do people skip over that step? It would seem to me that it's the core component. Now, your approach to it is brilliant in itself, but I've had this problem. I mean, I first encountered it 25, 26 years ago, that I couldn't even get people to talk about, you want it in PowerPoint or Word? They didn't even want to have that conversation, right? So what is it, just the reluctance of choosing? Is it a perception of don't have time for it? Why do you think that arises?
Well, one of the people I studied with in my neurolinguistic programming he said, resist generalizations. What does this particular person, what's going on with this particular person? And so I think I'd probably default to that, Chris. It's what was going on in this particular person's situation in life that they said something stupid and asked you to do something stupid, i.e. bad for me, bad for you. And inevitably, they were doing something. They were in a position that was not really pulling out their best. They were probably highly reactive. They were probably under a lot of pressure. And when you're highly reactive and under a lot of pressure, you shut down. You sort for the familiar, the mediocre, and the looking good. I'll say that again. When you're overwhelmed, the brain shuts down. Einstellung, I think that's the I'm not quite sure. Mark, you may help me out on that. But there's a formal syndrome called the Shutdown Syndrome, and where the brain simply says, enough, I'm going to sort for what's safe, familiar, mediocre. So in that context, Chris, your work is interacting with them, being with them in such a way that they move out of that wartime condition of being overwhelmed and shut down into where they're more able to kind of go, oh, wow, yeah, now that you put it that way, it really is a different problem. Which is to say, sometimes when you're talking to somebody that's in the shutdown, that are shut down, there really isn't anything to do but other than say, go with God. I'll get you, I'll meet you down the road, because can't work with you. And how I know I'm with the wrong people, I get angry, I get hostile, I get aggressive. That's my not early warning signal. That's my late warning signal. Like when I get angry and ornery, and that for me is a signal like I'm now violating one of my core principles, my core values. And so the anger in that context is a useful signal, which is to say, I was so in a rush, I was so that I forgot. So by the way, that's one of the things I ask in my morning journal. Part of my daily practice is I have a morning journal. And one of the things I ask and one of the things I write out every morning is, this is the the sixth item in my list of things. I write out, what has Michael Moon forgotten for which I am a stand to provide? So just put in your own name. What has Chris Hoyer forgotten for which you are a stand to provide? Don Ehlert. What has Don Ehlert forgotten for which you are a stand to provide? Now, every day it's going to show up a little different. And that's because the gem that is your gift has myriad facets. And quite literally, it's been my observation and experience that to experience directly your gift is akin to a psychotic episode. It is so overwhelming. We have limited tolerance for magnificence. And so that's why we have to kind of just take it one little slice at a time.
Yeah, while it's exhilarating, it is uncomfortable.
Excruciatingly uncomfortable. And that's why I say that in the process of bringing your gift to the world, it will transform you in the process. And I'm suggesting that it's probably a good idea, intelligent, to become conscious, deliberate, and persistent in doing that. And to have systems and habits that support you doing that. That you have daily practices for supporting you to do that. Now, again, it's like back in the Matrix. You can just take the blue pill and go to sleep and have a nice steak and, And for some, that's absolutely, that's absolutely what they're supposed to do. Because, I need a cast of thousands in the background to make my story all the more poignant.
Powerful stuff. We are at time. Just any other closing thoughts, or is there anything that you were expecting us to cover that we didn't cover that you'd like us to cover in a future session?
I also want to make sure that Nima, you'll get an invitation. You'll all get an invitation to come tomorrow. And particularly, I want you to know, Nima, yes, you'll be getting an invitation to join our collaboratory tomorrow. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you, Heather, for the other comments you're sharing with me on the side. I'm probably not going to get the reply in text before you get it. So I wanted to say thank you again. And for everyone for joining us and sharing with us. And please, again, if this has been helpful, please share with the work that we're doing with others so we can reach a broader audience. As mentioned,
or better yet, come back next week. We'll have a whole new topic that we'll do and bring a friend.
There you go. That's a
bring a friend. Or two.
And every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. And the topics we're getting better at, we're about to, in the next couple of weeks, actually have an advanced schedule. But as we've been working through this emerging, we appreciate your patience and your input, because it's the topics that come up here that we often lean into talking about next.
Well, let me ask this. Let's do a quick little poll. And I'm going to do a round robin. Don, what one topic would you like us to, you think what one topic should we address next week for the webinar?
Wow. I spend a lot of time up front with my clients. It's a 4 to 6 month process, figuring out who they are. So I use DISC personality testing and Enneagram and, Myers-Briggs and all of those to start the engagement. So I can really get to know their unique value and then place that in the context of their career and what should be next. And what do you want to do? What don't you want to do? And why? because it's
So-
how you do what you do that really matters.
Right. So,
Nice.
so a little bit of psychographic profiling. You said
Yeah.
Enneagram and DISC. Are there any others that you use?
Yeah, Myers-Briggs, and then there's actually a total of 9, and there's the big 5.
Do you use the Colby MO?
Not familiar with that one. I'm not sure at the moment.
KOLBE, Colby.
Okay. Yeah. So the beginning of the engagement, always find out who they are, what makes them tick,
Got
so
it.
that we direct them to a job.
So next week you're suggesting that we do a little bit on just kind of who are you?
Either that or psychographic, preferred psychographic testing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Heather, what would you like? What would you propose for next week?
Oh boy. There's like a variety of topics. I'm looking back through my notes. Maybe something similar to what Don said is my organization has a lot of ideas and a lot of projects they want to do, but they don't necessarily know which direction to go in, which makes agreeing on okay, this is the thing we're going to go work on, and then how to achieve that together, tying into what you've said about creating this agreement, and how does my work fit in? Is it valued? Am I contributing? I don't know if I have a specific topic.
So somehow it's about alignment of coordinating the actions of individuals and groups towards some shared outcome. Is that right?
Thank you for summarizing that.
Perfect. Nima, is there something in particular you'd like to have out
That's
of me?
one of Michael's gifts, Heather, is that he's able to take a statement this long and make it this long.
I'm noticing that.
Nima, is there something in particular you'd like?
I'm just at this point just absorbing right now.
Sure.
I think I'm actually qualified to ask anything yet. I'm just absorbing and learning from you, and this is very, very interesting and very useful for me. So thank you so much. I will chime in when I have something to contribute, but at this point, I think I should just listen in. Thank you.
Cool. Paul, how about you? Is there a particular topic that you would want us to develop and that might have that also might be advancing for the group? And as Paul is thinking about that, Mark, how about you?
Unmuting helps. Good at putting people on the spot, right? As I like your approach from kind of one approach that you have is like starting with the end. So, and I think a lot points to this Moneyball and this contract and the different facets of it. So it would be almost interesting, like jumping to the end, starting with the Moneyball, and then kind of working backwards. So what you need to have in place to end up with that 500 million contract for the next 5 years. That would be awesome.
Okay, so so let's solve for X, where X is the epic life with an epic engagement situation, and then let's say what has to be there, right? By the way, that is
exactly
the
like really starting with the end and coming back. What is a fastest way maybe to get there? With obviously it will always like if you do like.
Oh God! You know what the
Michael, share all the shortcuts.
You know what the root cause of impatience? The root cause of impatience.
I am, or
I'm asking, do you know the root cause of impatience?
No.
Laziness.
Come on, I'm not lazy.
Well, that
By the
I'm
way,
not
when do we
lazy.
stop the recording?
I'm
here?
not lazy. It argues a little bit with how do I get there the fastest. Now, there's nothing wrong with being lazy.
Some of the greatest inventions come from that.
However, here's what I'm hearing you say, and just to let you know, I love Mark. Mark is like my younger brother or a kid brother. It's like, it's like can do no wrong. So, but what I hear Mark saying is, I need to have a more vivid, compelling end state. A more compelling, vivid, like, oh, that's the outcome of what it looks like fully operationalized. So then I can start filling in the pieces that I know that I'm missing, or building upon the pieces that I have already in place.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. I thought another idea I would have brought forward in terms of what I would like to see is almost the accompanying workbook for the now I think 13 steps. So like, what's the double click? So what is the workbook to fill? And there are two ways, right? Either you start in the end and work backwards. And in like many of our discussions that we had, Michael, I had the feeling that it's more productive to almost do that, right? Start, because otherwise you have on each step, you have seven options, and then you might end just somewhere. But if you know where you want to end up, and then work backwards, then obviously you still need to walk the path from the other way maybe, but at least you know what's coming, what's missing, and you hopefully are on the critical or
Great.
one of the
So that's the topic that's the subject that we'll do, Chris. Working backwards. Or there's a I know you're Swiss, but in German there's a saying in Germany called putting on the saddle from the back of the horse. There's some. How's that go?
Das Pferd vom Schwanz her aufsatteln oder so. So basically putting the saddle from the back instead of from the mouth, right?
Right.
Oh.
So let's do outcome-based planning and working backwards from an ideal engagement. Out of that, we'll get into the psychographics and the other things.
Yeah. I was just going to offer the opinion that I think Mark might be looking for some, not necessarily shortcuts for how to get to his desired end, but where are the holes in the road that I can steer around? In other words, it's counting on the wisdom of Chris, of you, Michael, the wisdom again. That the scars of life have inflicted upon us, shall we say?
Absolutely. So is Paul still there?
Is that sum up what you're saying?
That is correct, Don. Yes.
Perfect.
Mark, is that what you were thinking?
Totally. I'm not too worried about the road bumps, but really like which road to take, right? So maybe even bigger, like I think the bumps you will still have, and that's then more in the micro, but really on the macro, like if I want to go to New York, like I start bidding there is like easier than, oh, this road, where do I need to go now? Left or right? I don't know. Like I take a guess and then, oh shit, it actually did go left and I wanted to go up and whatever, right? So more this, if I go backwards and more like, yeah,
Got it.
easy.
Got it. So you're basically asking for the ways of waymaking. Exact.
A nice way to put it. And maybe just one comment to your question or topic, Don. Look at Ray Dalio if you haven't. His book Principles, I think really like he is very evident, like very focusing on what makes people tick. And one of his big principles is like be aware that everyone is different, and if you have the right team and making also within yourself you are different and making the different personas you have inside your head basically speak up and bring them forward. That's maybe also a good point to start. And then there's a book, Winning from Within, that I just read recently. Very basic, just 4 types plus 3 extra types. Very interesting as well if you're looking into going that route.
Awesome.
So it's Ray Dalio Principles.
Dalio, sorry. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're a bit over, so thank you for staying with us. What we've been doing here in the last bit is more akin to what we do in our collaboratories. Michael, I did hear you wanted to invite all the active participants to tomorrow for Thursday, yes?
See who shows up.
All right, so I'll be sending an invite here to you all shortly to join us again tomorrow. The collaboratories that we do on Thursday are less presentation and more interaction, and more about actually getting to do some of the work. There's a little bit tomorrow I want to share with you with regards to one of the potential opportunities that has been put in front of me that I have decided not to take because of the fact that I can't get clarity from them. And I've realized it's not going to be a good fit. And I want to talk about how I came to that and the experience of it, and also measuring the opportunity, which is another thing. As I believe Don said earlier, it's also important to understand what you don't want to do as much as it is what you do want to do. And gosh, knowing that, I feel so much freedom, even though I still have the burden of going, am I really turning away hundreds of thousands of dollars? Well, yeah, maybe not. But anyways, we learn to get comfortable with that in time. Thank you all for joining us again and for sharing these thoughts. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, we'll hopefully get to see you again next week. In the meantime, have a great day. Go off and make this something important and valuable for your own life, please. And let us know how we can help.
Thanks.
Thank you all.